Well, good morning. That didn't work like I thought it was going to, but I think I'm live. Good morning, Carol. Yeah, I know you're going to be in and out and running kids around going going to swimming class and getting your COVID shot and who knows what else today. But that's good. Thanks, James. I appreciate that. And good morning, sir. Always good to see you here. Always good to see you anywhere. So here's to a good morning's worth of friends and conversation. And Dean, good morning, follow the happy. Good to see you also. I love those those pictures you post of the guy sign up and well, I can't remember where he's at. Is it Colorado or somewhere that does the roadside signs and changes them? I saw an article on him on TV recently where they talked about how he got that started doing that and how he comes up with the different sayings. He apparently comes up with some ideas and then runs them by his family, see which ones they either like or boo down. All right, guys, this is Teddy. You're going to get up here. You got to turn around and say hi. Hey, turn around and say hi and show everybody your butt. Hey, Brett. Good morning. Good to see you in here. How's Addie and Evie and that grouchy old husband of yours? Yeah, you like that, Carol? That was, I don't know what year that was made, but that's one of my favorite coffee mugs. I actually found this mug and claimed it. It was left over in a bunch of stuff after when we were moving offices one time, and nobody had it, nobody wanted it, so I brought it home and preserved it. Carol said hi. Carol said hi. You want to say hi back? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He always has to get up and see what I'm doing when I sign on the computer. He'll get down in a few minutes. Oh, okay. Well, that sounds like fun. I'm talking to Brett, by the way. So you and Evie have the run of the house. That's probably not a bad thing either, huh? I'll have to get Josh to tell me about Addie's target practice sometime. Hush, Mike. Don't tell him. I might be. Actually, it's the dog videos that bother him the most. All right. Hmm. You about ready to hop down? Problem is, he gets really heavy after a while. Mike Wheeler, seems like there was something I was going to tell you, but now I can't remember what it was. Get down. There he goes. It was Tom. Yeah, James, I think that's probably, I don't know if that's Disney's fault or if that's the state's fault, because what I read last night after I'd heard about it was that the state said they could open April 1st if COVID cases are down to a certain point. So it may not be totally up to Disney when they do open, but most people were also speculating that even if they could open April 1st, since that's less than a month away now, that they might not open on the 1st, but sometime, during April. But I personally don't think they'll wait any longer than they have to. I mean, they want to stop some of the bleeding, and first time that place opens, they're going to be not packed, but as full as they can be. You know that. Although it's interesting, I think only state residents are going to be allowed in, which also brings me to another question. They canceled everybody's state annual passes, so how's that going to affect local attendance? I have to wonder about that, or at least they're not going to renew them, and I'm sure by now they've all expired since it's been over a year. So I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens. But I don't think the state helped any by putting that caveat in there that depending on, case level, California's had some ups and downs and had a pretty bad winter. But since they're probably following better protocols in a lot of states, maybe that'll help. Good morning, Amy. AJC Magic TV. Always good to see you in. I have to try to remember to look at the camera more. I tend to look down and read and try to figure out where I need to move my camera or something. I don't like how it's positioned. And that's probably not very professional. I should be talking about things like that off the air, I guess. Oh, it would help if I went the right way with it, wouldn't it? Oh, I don't either, Brett. I think you're right there. I do believe they'll have more than they'll have it more than they can take in, I'm sure. But I just, in the long run, since they've canceled those passes, I find that I don't know. People are going to want to go, and they're going to go, but that has to sting just a little bit since their local the local population is what really keeps them going. But I can also see how in some ways having annual passes to everybody, that probably doesn't help either. If that's a one-shot deal, and you get paid once a year, I'm sure they'd rather, since they'd make more money probably if it was all on individual. But I'm sure I'm sure that as soon as they're open, people will be lined up, because I know if I was out there and had been used to going on a regular basis, I'd be dying to go. I mean, I'm dying to go to Disney World, and I hadn't been down there in a few years now, so I can't, California, those people have been used to going in for a lot longer than we have. But I do hope they get open soon. I feel really bad for them. I think they've been done. I don't want to start a political argument, but I believe some of the stuff they've done out there has been good, but I don't know if I understand totally the Disney thing, because I know some parks were partially open before, but some they weren't letting open. I've seen people go to Knott's Berry Farm, for example, and while they didn't have rides open so much, they were still open. and people were there for the different holidays. Excuse me. Knock something in the floor. Hang on. Okay. Mute my. I don't know much about that, Brett. Is that sort of like a mini wine, food and wine festival? And is that something? Are they doing that over at American Adventure or whatever they call that now? The other side, Disney's California Adventure, DCA. Yeah, I don't know about that either, James. I mean, it's again, I don't want to start the political argument that it can bring, but sometimes I think states' rights are not always as beneficial as some people like to think they are. But that's a whole nother topic. Oh, wow, that's interesting, Mike. But I'm not surprised. I mean, they are dying to get out there and go. I mean, it's not literally, I hope. But okay, Mike, that's what I thought it was. I wasn't positive. How long does it generally last? Does anybody know? I've never kept up with it, and that's a shame to say because I really like Disneyland. I've only been out there once and spent a few days, but and I don't know if I'd rate it above Disney World, as we say, our park or my park. But I really liked it and enjoy it, and I really can't wait to go back. I want to. There's so much new stuff, especially in California Adventure, that I've never seen. It's been quite a while since I was out there. I'm trying to think when it was. My youngest daughter was in high school, and she was out there for a band. Their band played in San Diego, and they got to go to Disneyland one day. She went to California Adventure instead. So that would have been in the early aughts, prior to 2001, 2002, maybe. Somewhere around in there. Yeah, it's so fun. I mean, Brett, if you've never been out there, it's small compared to Disney World, but everybody says quaint. I hate to use that term too. Everybody says quaint. It's quaint, but I guess it is quaint, and it's just they've done such a good job of spacing using the space they have that it doesn't necessarily feel crowded. I mean, it gets full. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, you don't feel like they've condensed all the park into such a tiny space that you don't have any place to move around. They've done a good job of for eating places. They have good seating. They've just used the space well. I don't know that Disney World has done such a good job, but that's what happens sometimes when you live with a luxury of space. You don't feel like you need to be as, think about it quite as much. Yeah, that's a good part too, James Ryan. Swapping parks and moving back and forth, and there's so much to do now at DCA that it's, as I said, since I've been there, and I'm not sure when, but pretty soon the Marvel zone will open, whatever they're calling that now. And since we'll probably never, well, not likely to have that here anytime soon, if ever. That'll be an interesting reason to go too. And I want to go to Cars Land. Cars Land looks fascinating to me. Have you been? I mean, do you get out there often, James? I know probably not as often as you go to Florida, but yeah, I'm sure it was, Brett. I'm sure the system was bogged down. Again, though, that's what happens when you starve people for for their Disney, and then once they finally get it, they're going to go. Everybody's going to go for it. I have another Mogi visitor today. Mogi, whatever. DCA had been built, Amy, when we were out there, but it hadn't been there very long. I think they were still in the process of. I don't think Tower of Terror was running yet. That might help me date the year when we were out there. Seems like they were still finishing it up. It was built, but it wasn't open yet. I don't think. And of course, Bugs Land was still there, and Pixar Pier wasn't called Pixar Pier back then either. It had another name. Yeah, that's what made it special for me too, Brett. That's what I told my wife. I said, "This is for me. This is extra special because Walt was here. This is Walt's place." I stood and stared at the apartment window above the fire hall where Walt used to stay, and where the lamps on and stuff. I was just mesmerized by that because growing up, that's just what I saw and what I dreamed of, and going to Disneyland just seemed like the ultimate mecca for some, or the ultimate pilgrimage for somebody like me. AGC Magic TV. I don't know if I'm not sure where you live, but have you been out to Disneyland more than once, or just had one trip? Or you said it was a long time ago, or before DCA anyway. Sorry, guys, I forgot to turn my phone down. Now I'll forget to turn it back up, and I'll miss everything that comes in later. Hey, guys, I don't forget to hit the like button, and if you don't like it, hit the don't like button. But sign up if you're not subscribed, and hit that bell for reminders, and maybe someday there'll be more people in, and we'll have more people to talk to besides just me. That's right. That's exactly right, James. I had a ViewMaster, and I think pretty sure I had some Disneyland slides. Or wheels, disc, whatever you want to call them. ViewMasters were great, weren't they? I saw one. I just saw one for sale recently, and I almost bought it. Oh, I know what it was. My daughter's auction house had one, and where she works. It's not her. She doesn't own it. And they had one, and I think it had some Disneyland. Can you tell I didn't sleep last night? I think it had. I think it had some Disney stuff, discs in it. In fact, it had a Mickey Mouse ViewMaster, and it had a plain ViewMaster. I didn't have the Mickey Mouse one; we just had the plain one. But ViewMasters were cool. I mean, we thought that was. Well, it was cool. It was just cool. It felt like you could just reach out there and be there. Okay, Amy. Well, we went out we got to go out because a friend of my wife's grandmother, my wife was born in La Jolla, California, and moved back east pretty young. But her grandmother and one of her, an aunt, a couple aunts maybe, and an uncle were still in California. And the grandmother had a friend who got to know my wife through some visits maybe or something, and maybe just through her grandmother, who was a very interesting lady. Someday I'll have to talk about her. And she gave us some free tickets on Southwest Airlines. Her husband worked for Southwest, and they occasionally got buddy passes, and they gave us the buddy passes, which we had to fly on standby, but that wasn't a big deal at that time. And we got to go out and go to Disneyland, see California. I didn't see as much as I'd like. I've always wanted to ride my motorcycle out there and ride down the A1A, the highway along the coast. Someday I hope to do that before I die, but someday. I'm still hoping. I'm not giving up yet. Well, yeah, it doesn't rain that often out there, so I don't remember how crowded it was when we were out there. I think we rode pretty much everything we wanted to. The only thing I didn't end up riding was that my wife really wanted to ride was that Ferris wheel at the pier, but she no problem, Amy. Take your time. Or I'm just glad you came in to visit, and I understand people have things to do on Saturday morning, so that used to be my errand day too. So I get that. Yeah, the roller coaster. Well, Pixar themes wasn't there then. The roller coaster wasn't theme for the Incredibles and that sort of thing. Brett, if you're still here, you guys have a trip planned? I was thinking I heard Brett or not Brett. You're Brett. I thought I heard Josh mention something about that, but I could be wrong. And I get mixed up. I talk to a lot of people, so I mean I could think about James, and then I have to remember he goes pretty regularly. 47 days. You think you don't know? That's just not right. You should have something counting down for you. We used to spend time on the Diz boards before there was, this kind of thing, and we always put a counter on our Diz board posts. And when we were going down, that was a lot of people did that then, I guess. Yeah, for several years we had an AP, and I haven't had one in several years now. Probably may never get another one, I guess, since we don't know how that's going to turn out. But when we had an annual pass, at least one of us would have one. Usually, my wife and I had one. That was a good incentive to spend more time because our park passes were paid for, even though they were a lot cheaper back then. So we figured it was easy justification just to pay for a room. So we'd make 2 or 3 trips a year and at least spend a few days down there each time. And hadn't been able to do that lately, so that's changed. Like to get back into that rotation again. Okay. Well, he's probably right on top of it, Brett. I'm sure. you guys are, and I know he's like a lot of us. It's as Lynn says, every day's a day closer to Disney or something like that. I can't remember how she says that now. Help me, Mike Wheeler. I know you know. I always get that wrong when I try to say it. That's what I get for trying to use somebody else's words or expressions. Yeah, I'm feeling kind of woolly. I need to get my mustache trimmed, my beard. Brett, were you since you're in here, I'll ask. I can't remember what Josh said about this, but are you a lifelong Disney fan, or did you start going down after you guys got married, or was it just a regular thing for your family, your natural family to do? You know, it's a funny thing. YouTube's delayed over here, but chat's up to speed. And over on my StreamYard, chat or I'm in sync, but the chat seems slower. It's strange. Every day is a countdown to Disney. That's right, Brett. Thank you. I was close, I think. Had the countdown part. For myself, I started going to Disney World in the early 70s. I think I say I think, and I've got a commemorative coin over here. I got to look and see if it's got a date on it because I bought that one of my visits, but that wasn't the first visit. I don't think. And we started going down. I was in high school, and I had my best friend in high school. His sister and brother-in-law lived in Florida during the fall, winter, and spring. He taught school down there, and they came back to Tennessee in the summers. When back then that was the tourist season down there, and they lived in Fernandina Beach, which is on Amelia Island, which is all grown up now and doesn't look anything like it did back then. But so we'd go down and help them move, bring them back, look like a band of gypsies. I wish I had photographs of that. It looks like something right out of the Grapes of Wrath, really. But we'd come back up. But one of the trips down there, or maybe two of the trips down there, we actually spent a day at Disney World. It was still fairly new then. It was in 73 or 74 the first time. So it was, James, you went to Disneyland in 67. Wow, that's good. So you were there in 71. So you beat me by a couple of years then. I flew over it. I used to fly a lot. And the guy went down there to help move back to Tennessee, was a flight instructor. And he always had a small plane handy. So we flew out, and he took me over there one time. We flew from Fernandina Beach down to Orlando area, just circled overhead. But we went out to Disney World, and seems to me like, and I can't remember what year they opened Space Mountain, but it seems to me like they were building Space Mountain at that time. Somewhere I've got pictures of that. I know I've said that before, but I got to see if I can dig those negatives up or the images up and see if I can get them reprinted or something if I still got the negatives, because I'd like to see it then too and remember what was really there then, because the only hotels there were Contemporary and the Polynesian, and the campground was open, and that was it. I mean, there wasn't anything else back then. Oh wow, Brett, that's special though. That's neat. I mean, that you and her got to see it for the first time together. That's cool. I like that. I wish I could. I kind of wish I could say that in a way. My girls were a bit older. They weren't that old. Kelly was still small enough that I could carry her around. We waited to go back until they got a little bit bigger, but I took several years of changing jobs and letting them grow up a little bit before we went down. Took them down for the first time, but my wife and I went at least once when we were still dating. I was living down there. Her mom and dad brought her to Florida, and we got to go over and spend a day. And but I'd been over there 2 or 3 times without, with when I was living there with other people. People would come down to visit, and we were there in '76 before the 4th of July. I had wanted to be there for the 4th of July since that was going to be such a big celebration, the bicentennial. And we weren't there for that. By that time, school had ended for the semester or trimester, they called it down there then. And so I was already back home for the summer working. Couldn't be there for that. But leading up to that, they had all kinds of music and celebrations of different kinds. I saw Jose Feliciano there, and I believe that was right before '76. He was playing in an outdoor stage somewhere near Tomorrowland. And that first trip, Amy, was that to Disney? I assume that was to Disney World. James, I probably mentioned this before too. My guitar keeps coming back around, this Arlo Guthrie would say, but oh man, that train ran off the tracks. I had a friend when I was in elementary school, James, again, way back there, probably about 63 or maybe 64. She left. We had a going away thing for her, but I'll never forget because her dad they were moving to Florida because her dad had a job with Disney to build in Disneyland World. I don't know if that was just he was going down there for construction work or if he was actually, hired by them to do something else. But I've always remembered that, and I always wondered if, how that worked for them, if she might have gone to work there or whatever. Well, hey, here's a different one. This is Brenda's little girl. This is Chloe. And while she, likes me okay, she tolerates me. Otherwise, she doesn't want me to hold her. She's a mama's girl. I lived in Daytona Beach for a couple of years in the mid '70s. So that's when I was down there first. I was that age. I was in high school. Actually, I was in high school now that I think about the first times I went. Holy history. Well, that's right, James. That's why I was trying to remember. I was just in first or second grade. And I remember, I even remember her name. It was Vicki Denton, Denton, because I was kind of sweet on her. That was my first sort of, I thought was a girlfriend. I didn't know much better than that. So I'd ride my bicycle. She lived on the same road I did, and I could ride my bicycle down to her house. And but anyway, I'll just always remember they were going to Disney. Her dad was going to Disney World for a job. Yeah, James, there's advantages and disadvantages to that history thing. We got lots of it to talk about, but I'm not sure everybody wants to hear it. Well, since you brought it up, James, tell me this. I don't know if you grew up in New York or where, but did you have kindergarten where you grew up? Because when I grew up, I didn't even know what kindergarten was. I guess some people had it, but we didn't. I mean, my schools didn't have it. I just started in the first grade and just thought that's the way it was. And I don't remember knowing how to read or write or anything when I started. Kids these days know a lot of that before they even start now. I can't imagine what kind of head start that gives them, or at least compared to us back then. Hey, James, that'd be a whole different. We'll have to talk about that when we get together someday over a cold drink. That'd be a whole different life experience than what I had. I grew up in the country pretty much as a rural kid. Where? Oh, yes, that is an umbrella you see back there. Hey, Josh, welcome. Right there on the right, right there on the refrigerator. Sure is. I've got another one I meant to put on there, but I'm not sure. I can't remember if a magnet will stick to that door or not. That's a sticker, I believe. Yikes. Well, tell me, James, did you get your knuckles slapped a lot, or is that just rumor? Is that just a what do they call it? Suburban myth. Well, Josh, I heard you were out working out or out and about and you were working out. So, yes, I grew up down in the holler. Yes, I did. I have an aunt that's probably my mother's oldest sister's youngest kid. And I don't know, she and I were always kind of close, even though, our age difference is a few years. But after one of my uncles died, I rode with her to the funeral and back, and we were driving along. She said, the greatest thing our mothers did for us? And I looked at her and I said, what's that? She said, they left the holler. She said, they got us the hell out of the holler. She said, so we had a better chance at doing other things. And she's right. I mean, a lot of my family never left the holler, literally. Now, whereas James, did you grow up actually in the city, or just when you say New York, is that generic? Or you said New York City though, didn't you? Yeah, you did. So you grew up in the skyscraper canyons. Life is simpler in the holler. That's true. And we did some things, Josh, that I don't know where you grew up, but we did some things that I probably would have died if my daughters had done. And for the most part, it was okay. I mean, they had horses and raised horses and showed horses and stuff back then, or one of my uncles did, and they had ponies on the farm. So my cousin and I, we were the same age by 2 days, and we hop on those ponies, saddle them up, and take off, and we'd be gone somewhere all day long. And honestly, nobody knew where we were at. We were just out traveling the roads, which were mostly, paved or dirt roads and gravel. But we'd just be gone. I guess they just figured we'd be home when we got home. Okay, Brett, thanks for coming by. I really appreciate it. And Evie too. Have a good Saturday. Yeah, we had hogs when I grew up. That was a fall thing we did over on my mother's side of the family. They would have a big, I guess you could say, a family gathering and have hog killing in the early fall or late fall, early winter. I can remember that as a kid. They usually had 2 or 3 big hogs they would butcher and share amongst the family. And everybody may have been pitching in to help feed them and whatnot, but that's something we did. They were country folk. They just did that. How far? Where's your family at, Josh? Besides, I mean, are they still out around Nashville, or do you have family back this way, or is it on the plateau? Or I don't know if I've ever asked you that or not. I don't know who said that. Oh, they had one side. Josh said that. I tell you what, hogs can be bad news. They're not all. They're not all pink and fuzzy. Perry County, okay. I've been to Perry County. Carol. He probably did get an early start. Probably came natural to him once he got to be a lawyer. Go back to the pig thing. Pigs are smart, and actually they're actually clean animals. They love to roll in the mud, but they're pretty clean animals, but they will absolutely do harm if they take a notion to, or they've got the reason to it. And they probably not a good topic for a Saturday morning, but they will eat you if they get half a chance. But I'm thinking Perry County's on the Tennessee River. Am I right, Josh? That's where I was thinking it was. Maybe I've got the wrong county, but it's not too far down below Kentucky Lake, I didn't think. I thought so. I used to hunt out there some when I lived in Nashville. We had a lease. That was a different place. But I used to go out and hunt paper company land out there in that part of the world. Perry County used to be a mecca too for people that wanted to hunt deer back then. Hard to believe now, but we hardly had deer at all up here where I'm at now. East Tennessee there were deer, but they were hard to find. And I knew people that hunted most of their life without seeing or shooting a deer. But West Tennessee was thick with them, so people would drive all the way down there to hunt sometimes. James. Don't you know you can go to hell for that? Or maybe you really did. I shouldn't say that. That's not nice of me. I've made a judgment based on facts not yet in evidence, as Perry Mason used to say. Speaking of education, I grew up in the rural public school system, and I think I got a good education. And people always berate public schools and public school teachers, but I had some great teachers. And I'm not bragging, and I don't do that well. I'm not, but I'm pretty smart when I need to be, and I got it from somebody. I read a lot, and they encouraged that, I guess. But wait a minute now. I missed the poisonous creature part. That's the thing I'd be glad to talk about. Carol, please do tell us about Sister Mary Jane, or what is it? Is that Senior Mary Jane? Does that mean she was the head of the school? Or Tennessee is fond of its poisonous creatures, so Triple P, you're absolutely correct. We have our fair share anyway. Just about any kind of rattlesnake. Well, not every kind of rattlesnake. We have 2 or 3 rattlesnakes. Probably one of the meanest there is, and that's a timber rattler. And then we got our poison spiders. That's true. But that's a subject I can expound upon. Wildlife in general. At least in this state. Copperheads. Water moccasins down the west part of the state. Or cottonmouths, I should say. But everybody calls everything up here, every kind of snake that lives in or near the water, water moccasin to people. Built like a linebacker. I love that, James. That's you gotta respect a gal like that. I mean, of course, I'm sure the sisters got probably a fair bit of respect as it was, even if you weren't a good kid, so to speak. I don't remember having any. I had the only teachers I had that were linebacker like were usually football coaches that taught something in high school. Um, yes and no, Josh. They tried to reintroduce red wolves up here in the Smokies, but it was unsuccessful. Personally, I don't think they gave it enough time. People were so freaked out about the fact that it was a wolf that they gave the wildlife management resources group so hell every time one of them left the park. But you can't keep a canid like a wolf inside a park boundary. For one, they don't know what the boundaries are, and two, they wander. That's what they do. Part of what they do for a living. And but there was that, and then there was one other thing that was bad. The red wolf population was so low that they were trying to keep the gene pool as clean as they could. And one thing they were afraid of or knew from past experience was that red wolves would crossbreed with coyotes. And by the time they introduced the red wolves here, we were thick with coyotes, which was something we did not have until, I don't know, the 80s, sometime in the 80s, I think, maybe late 70s, coyotes started showing up here. And now they're everywhere. So they ended up pulling the red wolves out of the park, and I'm not sure there's a wild population left. They were out in the well, parts of it are tame, Josh. It's still a pretty big place, and there's still a lot of areas that people can't get to easily. It's a great park. I mean, I love to go. We used to go there all the time. I used to hike there at least a couple of times a month. And but anyway, it was really cool because I knew a couple of people that worked up there as wildlife interns and stuff. And I got to actually go see the red wolves, which was something most people did not get to do. And because they didn't really want people around them. They didn't want them to get habituated to seeing people as much. They wanted them to stay away from people as much as they could. You got to do that. If they're not afraid of people, then that just gets them in trouble. That's what happens with the bears. They start eating picnic food and like Yogi, and then pretty soon, they're in trouble. So they've got to move them or euthanize them. And I hate to say it, but bears don't often take to being moved. They just come right back a lot of times. They moved some all the way up into the Cumberland Mountains a few years back just to start a population, reintroduce population up in those areas. And some of them traveled all the way back to the Smokies just because that's because they wanted to. Yeah, coyotes have been a problem, and I'm not one to talk about eliminating species or things like people used to be, but they're not natural back here. And as far as we know, coyotes were never common back here. One of the reasons they think they weren't common is because the red wolf was back here. And back then, the red wolves were thick enough and strong enough genetically and whatnot they probably kept the other prey species like coyotes out. But once they were gone, and then it became easier for the coyotes to cross the Mississippi River, they moved in. And now, but the other thing that happened, it was a funny story. We had coyotes up here and in the Great Smoky Mountains before they had them in West Tennessee. And what they found out, there was a bunch of idiot fox hunters were actually going out west, and they'd trap coyotes, or somebody would, and they would bring them back to Tennessee to run their dogs with. They didn't have enough foxes, so they would run coyotes. And next thing you know, coyotes are everywhere. So they spread literally from both ends of the state. I'm trying to get my hands where you can see them. It's East Tennessee and West Tennessee, and they came together. It was really stupid, but it happened. I gotta catch up here a minute. Okay, that's our sister. Okay, well, I thought so, but I wasn't sure. Oh God, God, Carol, that's crazy. I just now saw the part where she marched the gap down the rows. Yes, bears are stubborn, Josh, and they're smart too. Burmese, get me started on Burmese pythons. All the python species now, and anacondas. I mean, it's really ridiculous. Again, I don't like to talk about eliminating species, but they're invasive and they displace the native species, and it just people don't realize how badly that affects the whole ecosystem. So coyotes here are really the same way. They really don't belong here, and they displace what we have here: gray foxes and red foxes. But red fox technically aren't native either, but they're not nearly as invasive as coyotes are. And I'm sure by now, I mean, people used to blame coyotes for everything from eating their calves and their lambs to all, or even grown cattle, which they probably never did. Honestly, in this part of Tennessee and probably a lot of Tennessee, I hate to say it, but people here were always bad about turning dogs loose if they didn't want them. Take them out in the country and drop them alongside the road. And packs of wild dogs are probably much more dangerous and harmful to cattle than coyotes will ever be. Actually, Josh, we do. It depends on where you're at. Wild hogs are really bad in some counties, and they're terribly invasive. They destroy everything. If you've ever seen where one's gone through the woods, it looks like a gang of rototillers just churned up the earth. And there'll just be patches like that where they've gone along rooting for acorns and whatnot. They're so bad in the national park in the Smokies that they actually have hired shooters, hunters that go in there at night. And maybe, I don't know if they hunt there, maybe in the winter when the park's less populated, but they actually go in and hunt them with rifles and silencers, or suppressors, I guess is the correct word these days. But I've actually met a couple of those guys, and they kill a lot of hogs in the park because they're destroying the habitat for bears and turkeys and other things. And man, they just tear up heck. They're really hard on the earth, and when they're not native, they have no enemies. I doubt very seriously that many hoglets or whatever you call baby hogs, I can't remember, piglets. I doubt very seriously that many of them die as bear food, or maybe some coyotes might get a few small ones, but wild hogs are also mean and protective, and will run your butt up a tree just at any time. But they actually hunt them in the parks and some of the other counties too. Yeah, you can't really use helicopters up here because there's so much canopy stored in the trees and the woods. But out there, they could. Yeah, I know people have done that out west too, or I've known people that have talked about it. I have a good friend of mine that's a wildlife manager out west. He's now in Wyoming, but he's talked about some of that. I don't know if they've done that for coyotes out there or not at times, but I know they do counts and things in helicopters out there. It's tough. We many years ago when TVA was more active in waterfowl management, they used to do a lot of helicopter counts. They'd fly over the lakes and rivers at certain times of the year and see how many birds they could count. They have a system for doing that, believe it or not. And but to shoot hogs from helicopters, you'd just be lucky if you even saw them. I mean, you could, in certain times of the year, you could probably see them. But even then, still, you'd have to shoot through the canopy, so that wouldn't be easy either. You know how that works. Well, Carol, Carkey, part of the problem with that is, of course, human population. Um, and a couple of different reasons. One, we've displaced them by building houses all over the place. But two, and this is also hard to say, I know people don't understand this or believe it or buy into it, but we've managed deer so well in a lot of places that the populations have just grown. Like I said, when I was growing up, East Tennessee had literally no Yeah, they do. I think they let them use them in the Smokies too, which you can't normally take quads into the Smokies, but I think those guys may get to, at least in certain areas. Anyway, even East Tennessee had no deer hardly at all when I was growing up. But rarely you'd see them, and it was an exciting thing. Now you have to watch for them, and you're afraid you're going to run out and hit your car every night. I've missed several on my motorcycle by so close that I could reach out and swat them in the butt. And believe me, they will do serious damage to somebody on a motorcycle. But anyway, we've done such a good job at protecting and bringing deer back in this state that a lot of counties now have overpopulations. And the Smokies, in fact, which will never be a hunting area, have overpopulation of deer at times. They populations explode. They have some good years, and they'll, that's one thing about wildlife. It'll fill a void. If there's enough food one year, they may have, or a couple years in a row, they'll have excess young. And then when that happens, they get the populations can get too high. So in the Smokies, every year they do a test in the Cades Cove area where they can get to deer, and again they hunt them with rifles with suppressors on them, whatever. But they do harvest a few because they do what's called an abomasal count. They actually open them up and look for a certain type of worm. I don't want to turn anybody's breakfast rancid here. And they can look at that inside the deer, and they can tell by how many they have or don't have what the population is like, the density. And if they're full of worms, then there are usually too many of them out there. It kind of works that way. So, yeah, several counties are like that now. And it shows up. People hit them with their cars. There's more automobile accidents. I can remember many years ago, I've always been interested in wildlife management, conservation, and whatnot. So I've always kind of kept up with this. But I can remember in Pennsylvania, they had a much greater population than we did. And there were more deer killed up there by car accidents than they ever killed hunting them. So cars are hell on wildlife. That's all the way to put it. But oh, surely you have, James. I know Hell's Angels have been up there. When you call that a wild hog, or maybe the wild hogs, maybe it was just in Disney movie. Yeah, and I could go on for days about that kind of stuff, wildlife stuff, because that's another one of the things I know something about. But one of the many things I've got a head full of trivia about. And the whole conservation wildlife management thing over the years has gone up and down about different things. Introducing exotic non-native species has been a hot topic for a long time. Everything from different kinds of fish to different kinds of animals, birds, beaver. Well, beaver's not here. Nutria in Louisiana's full of nutria now, and they were possibly brought in as a exotic species for either the fur trade or eating, which the fur trade's not much anymore, and nobody eats them, I don't think. They do, James, and sometimes they'll really open it up to Tennessee. Growing up historically, if you went deer hunting, you were only going after buck deer, which is probably the wrong thing to do from a population management thing, because there's always a lot more does, females, than there are males. So nowadays they do a lot more doe harvesting. They allow hunters to take more does home, which most of the time a doe tastes better, to be honest. It's not full of all the same kind of ruddy hormones that a sweaty buck can have in that time of year. But they do. And it took a long time to get people to understand that was the only way they could really manage the deer and actually end up with a better quality of deer. Yeah, it is now, Josh. It's pretty much county by county. There's also something called if you have an overabundance on your farm and they're actually doing damage to your crops, you can get a special permit to harvest more deer or pigs because of that. It's a damage thing. Farmers pretty much have always kind of ruled the roost when it came to stuff like that. But it's sometimes it's just needed. I mean, it's not only is it not good necessarily for the farmers, but if the population gets too big, it's just hard on the deer. And what you end up having is a die-off, which is never a pretty sight. And there's 2 or 3 diseases that deer can get that, generally speaking, aren't too bad. But if you get overpopulation, then they tend to really go nuts. And one's called blue tongue, and that's just a really bad one. Go ahead, Josh. Tell them what a tag is. That's right. So, James, basically you buy a license, and part of that license you can actually tear off, and you're supposed to attach that to the deer when you harvest it. So you can take it to a check station, and they can write down that's how they keep track of how many are killed and harvested each year in different counties. And you're only allowed so many per year. It used to be you get one, you take a deer in and check it in, and they give you a new tag. So that tag is actually attached to a deer's antler or foot or horn or something. And so literally it becomes a tag. Yeah, James, that's an interesting point too, because there are limits usually. There are some states, I know South Carolina used to be this way. They had such deer populations down there that they had no limits. You could pretty much take as many as you could get in a day, and you could do that for the length of the season. Now, I don't know how many people hunted there, and I don't know how many they actually harvested. But when I was growing up, I used to read the harvest numbers, and I can remember when if Tennessee shot like 14,000 deer in a season, that was a lot. And today it's well over 100,000. I don't know what the numbers are now, but a few years ago, that's what they were. Yes, he will, James, or Josh. The game wardens just love to catch you without tagging your deer, or catch you with more than one. Every once in a while, there's that sneaky guy that thinks he's really smart and shoots 2 and takes one in and gets a new tag and goes back out to tag the second one. Sometimes that don't work out right. Bye, Amy. Great to have you here today. Thanks for coming in. And you're always welcome to come back. I hope you do. Have a good day out there. I used to hunt a lot, and I quit hunting a few years back when I couldn't draw my bow much anymore. I did a lot of oh, is she, Josh? That's cool. I didn't know that. That's interesting. Well, good luck to her. That's one thing I've never managed to do was get a turkey. I brought some in. I called some in and brought one right up my face one day, and I was hunting with a flintlock, muzzle loading flintlock, and my powder got damp and it fizzled and didn't go off, and he was long gone by the time it did go off, but it had a delay. And time it delayed, he was long gone, so I missed him. That was so close. Turkeys are cool. I like turkeys, but that's another thing. It's actually overpopulated in some areas now, but turkeys are considered a huge success in Tennessee for bringing them back. I mean, they were common birds here years ago, and then they got to where there were never any around. First one I ever saw wild was in the Smokies. Yeah, I know you got to keep your powder dry, Josh. Yeah, if you've ever shot a flintlock, you know that the powder's in a flash pan, and the flint hits the striker and ignites the powder in the pan, which goes into the gun and shoots it off. So there's always a slight delay. And I can't remember if it was wet that day. I've hunted a couple of times when it was raining, and I always tried to keep my powder dry with an old piece of leather that I tied around my flint. Well, I used to hunt with muzzleloaders a lot. Black powder and bows and arrows is pretty much what I did most of the time. And so keeping your powder dry was important. I learned that one the hard way that day. Sometimes you just can't. I mean, when it's that wet, you just can't do it. That's one nice thing about having brass cartridges. They don't usually have to worry about them getting wet, or shotgun shells. Let's see. Somebody brought up something and gave me a thought, and I was going to expound upon it. Now I can't remember what it was. Well, maybe it'll come back around on the guitar here in a minute. I have to ask, does anybody know where that came from? That term? When it comes back around on the guitar? James, come on. Surely you do. And if you don't, that's okay. And I'll be a little disappointed, but I have to believe if anybody in here knows where that came from, it would be you. When I went back to school, I kind of thought I might be. That's what Florida folks understand. Oh, yeah, they don't understand that. Josh, you're absolutely correct. I mean, in some ways it's worse here because there's often no breeze. In Florida, especially if you're towards the coast, I mean, there's almost always a breeze off the ocean. So even when it's super hot and muggy, there's a little bit of air moving. But down this way, you get down in the hollers here between the mountains or in the trees, and it's steamy and humid, and it's like a pressure cooker, and the air don't move around. I've been here all my life, or lived in the South all my life, and that's the one thing it would probably drive me north is the humidity and the hot. This bear don't like it. I just soon be up north somewhere. I'd rather go up north in the summer, and I wouldn't even care much if I came south in the winter. But although and then the other thing though is, as humid as it is up here, we still don't complain about the cold as much as Florida people do. I say that with gritted teeth, just in case, Carol, that's a good point, and that's really true. Now, I'm going to tell you, not all hunters and fishermen are that way. I mean, some of them are some moral scruples. Some have I don't necessarily approve of, and that's probably me being holier than thou. I just always had a great deal of respect for the game and the fish, and that's probably why I don't have tons of stuff hanging on my wall or anything. That wasn't what it was about for me, and I never wanted to, let it get to that point. But if it wasn't for, honestly, and this is the truth, if it wasn't for hunters and fishermen, this country would have a far less diverse wildlife population than it does today. We paid for it, or hunters and fishermen paid for it. They started Congress passed two bills back in the 30s, I think, or maybe 40s. One put a tax on ammunition and guns and things like that. It's called the Pittman Act, and it's two names, and I can't remember. It was these back when they used to work across parties. You usually have a bipartisan bills, and there was usually a name of a Democrat and a Republican on the bill. But that money that first money on ammunition and guns went to restoration of wildlife in the whole country. Every state got a cut of that. And then they passed another law about the same time or a few years after, did the same thing for fishing. And if it hadn't been for that, a lot of states wouldn't have wildlife today. Okay, James, I appreciate you coming by. We probably won't be here too much longer. I mean, I'll sit here and talk as long as somebody's here, but I know people have things to do on Saturday. So I appreciate you being here, James. Always good to see you, buddy. And the day's drawing ever closer, as Lynn says, where we get together down there and have a cold beer or a good shot of Irish whiskey or something. And I'm looking forward to that day. Yeah, it's true, Josh. They do. It's just a matter of getting caught. I mean, honestly, it's like so many other things. Wildlife and fisheries agents are usually on such tight budgets that there's not enough of them to patrol everything. But you're right. Most people that want to cheat and do things usually end up getting caught. Sooner or later, they get caught, and it's I like that. I'm glad they do. I know quite a few people that work in the state agency here, that known as Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency, and they're a pretty much independent organization in the state of Tennessee. So politics plays less of a role in what they do. Some states it's actually run by the state government, and that's usually not always a good combination for either side, to be honest. But in this state, they are pretty independent, but they also have struggle for funding. They get a lot of their money from that excise tax, honestly, and things like that. Something that really disappointed me, it kind of changed the subject, maybe go to what Carol was saying, since she's a vegetarian. When I was back in college in the late 90s, yes, I was about 40 at the time. I went back late. There was a movement to try to get some excise tax passed on camping equipment and things like binoculars, so that the wildlife watchers and the people that just enjoyed being outdoors could also put in some money to help fund that stuff, to help protect the environment and protect the wildlife and their habitats and whatnot. And I worked with a group in college that was really active in that, trying to get that movement passed, and calling people and talking to people about it and handing out literature. And because I thought it would be a great thing. I mean, hunters and fishermen have been paying their way for a long time, and most hunting licenses and fishing licenses, that's what they support directly. But nobody wanted to do it. People were up in arms that they were going to be charged to go out and enjoy the great outdoors, and it just seemed so unfair to me. I mean, I really thought better of people, I suppose. But, I figured since we've been paying it, or back then I would say, I can't say I pay for it right now because I've just not been doing a lot of hunting. I'm buying a few things that go to that, but that's another topic too, I guess. But it just always really upset me that there was that part of the population that, didn't want to hunt, didn't want to fish, or for whatever reasons. And that's okay. I'm not sitting here to ridicule somebody that doesn't like hunting, but they also didn't want to pay to go out and enjoy the wildlife if they were bird watchers or, backpackers, or it was just kind of one-sided, I thought. And we couldn't get that passed. I was really disappointed. I worked with a group of people, other people around the country, that were trying to get some of the big outdoors companies like REI, for example, on board to help support that. And they just wouldn't touch it. I guess they were just afraid they'd lose too much business. I think they could look back and see what it did for hunting and fishing and realize that it probably didn't hurt business. People probably complained when it first happened, but it didn't take long for them to fill it out. Yeah, I do too, Carol. I hate to say that, but I do think you're right. I think it is part of the entitlement thing. But you gotta pitch in. Again, it could go political, and I'm not trying to do that, but it always bugs me when I hear people complain about something. Maybe the roads, maybe it's the wildlife management, but they don't want to pay taxes, or they don't want to pay, buy a license to help pay for that. Or it's like they feel like they're owed it, entitled to it. And I don't just mean Social Security and that kind of thing. Honest to God, I worked for my Social Security. At least, I was paying into that, and at least I was doing something there. But just to sit back and say, well, I deserve that is not very far thinking. I guess we were raised different. James and I are of the age that we were, I'm sure, both raised by parents that either grew up in the Depression or whose parents grew up in the Depression or lived through the Depression. And I definitely know that affected how I was brought up, because my dad was, he was a recycler back before anybody knew what recycling was, including me. I mean, we reused lumber and even nails if they weren't bent too bad. And I've seen him straighten out many a nail to tack something together rather than go out and buy some more nails. He couldn't stand to waste anything. And I know that had to do with a lot to do with growing up during the Depression, when you didn't have anything. And if you didn't reuse a nail, you might not have had a nail to put something together with. So, till the day he died, not till the day he died, but till the day he could get out and wander the roads, he'd get out and take walks every day, just for his health. And he'd pick up aluminum cans or bottles, one, to pick them up off the road, but for the other reason, he thought it was just wasteful to leave them there. You can recycle that stuff. You too, Josh. I appreciate you coming in after working out, and hopefully I'll see you around later today somewhere, or this evening. And you have a good day too. Glad you stopped by. And to the family also. I didn't get Addie. Oh, she's not there. Hope she had a good day target practicing, though. That'd be good. And I can't wait to find out if she gets to take a shot at the turkey. That'd be amazing. Okay, who's that leaving here? Just me and you, Carol? I don't know. There's only 4 of us in here. I know Amy had to leave, and James is gone, and now Trip P's gone, and Amy may be driving, so she may not even be able to answer me. Let me see who's still in here. Probably just me and you, Amy, so I guess we might as well shut things down. Although I'd be glad to stay here and keep chatting if you're able to talk. I know you're on the road, so you may not be able to. And I don't want to just bore you. I have to be careful. I might look a little bit too lonely or anxious. I don't know what the right word is. You probably can't see me. You're probably just listening. So I have found that I love doing this, and I don't think I'm any good at it yet, and I have a long way to go, but I like to talk. I have a gift of gab, they used to tell me, and I guess I tend to mansplain things too much, but I have a head full of trivia and knowledge and things I've learned over the years, and I like to share it, and I love to talk about it. And if I don't know about it, I like to learn about it. And there are some topics that I just have a lot of information stored up, and I don't always get to share that with anybody, and nobody else is around to listen. My wife, but she's heard it all, so I'm pretty sure she cuts it off. Although she still asks me questions when it comes to her family, they have a lot of varying opinions and philosophies on a lot of things in life, and so I know that's come up more than once. But anyway, do you have any big plans for the day, Carol, besides the errands you're running now? Costco. I've yet to go into a Costco, and we have one here now. Oh, we've had one here for several years, and I have not gone, and I want to, because I still hear things in Costco about things in Costco being good bargains or good deals. Many years ago, we used to go to Sam's Club, and Sam's Club has been in this area for a long time. Oh, that'd be good, Carol. Do you skate yourself or just your daughter? And I asked that because I couldn't skate from here to the door without killing myself, and with my back problems these days. Of course, I can't stand up. Couldn't stand up on skates, but I've been afraid for years to do something like that and hurt my back worse, so I've stayed away from them. That's why I don't ski anymore. Well, one reason. And but it looks like so much fun. And my wife and I were talking about that recently because I grew up again in the age when roller rinks were kind of a thing. That fad's kind of gone up and down over the years. And her dad used to be able to skate. He was a skating wizard. Don't know how or why. I guess growing up, that was one of the things they could afford to do was go skating. And he skate backwards and circle. He could do everything. And she used to skate with him. Not as good. She never could do some of that backward skating stuff, but she's talked about him skating for years. And I guess he and his, I said my wife was born in California. And the reason that happened, he was out there with the Navy. He was in San Diego at the naval base out there. And that's how he met his wife and her mom. And, they were out there stationed for 2 or 3 years before they moved back east. I think they skated a lot. California at that time probably did. Well, you do that, and you be careful. I always imagine one breaking my tailbone, which is painful. I've done that before, but the only time I remember really trying to skateboard much, I hurt my wrist really bad. I didn't break it, I don't think, but it hurt for ages, and it still does a little bit from time to time. So maybe it grew back wrong, but I'm always afraid that's what I'm going to do. The few times I tried to go skating at the skating rink with either my girlfriend or buddy or whatever reason, basically what I did was hold on to the wall around the rink and try to figure out how to make it work. So I hope you have success. I hope you don't get hurt, but I hope you have great success. I see more and more skating. Skating is, I guess it's been it's been popular for years still, but I think it's picked back up again. Yeah, I don't think I've ever been on a pair of rollerblades. I always thought that would be a fun way to do it too, because I'd love to be able to ice skate. Not that there's opportunities around here to ice skate, but we do have a skating rink. The hockey team, we have a hockey team, whatever they call it, a Bush League level hockey team, farm team or whatever. And there's a couple of rinks here in town that they use for practice and they play downtown. But I know that there's times of the year when you can go in and skate, and I think they stay open here. Excuse me. I think they stay open year round, but I've never tried it. My daughters can. They can both skate some, and they can ice skate some. And which is something we used to do at Disney. Did you ever go to Disney at Disney World around Christmas? Because years ago, they used to set up a small ice skating rink over at the Village Marketplace, or what do they call it now? It's not downtown Disney anymore. We're not in Kansas anymore, Toto. Springs, Disney Springs. They used to set up a skating rink over there for Christmas and the Christmas time frame. And you can go over there and skate. And our girls love to go over there. One night or so while we were there during that time of year, they love to go skate. So we'd always take them over and let them skate a little while. And they weren't masters at it by any means, but they were good enough at it to keep doing it and to enjoy it for the time they could. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I mean, and some of those winters we were down there, it was actually cool enough to be pleasant and cool enough to be cold at night. I know a couple of times we went down and had to buy sweatshirts or something just to kind of stay warm because it was so cool. Because it does with that humidity down there. I have to admit, I don't like to admit it often, but it does get chilly, especially if it gets down in the 40s. And but when it's 80 degrees, it's probably a hard time keeping the ice solid. But it was a lot of fun. They enjoyed it a lot, and I love to go down there for the holidays. So we used to try to go between Thanksgiving and Christmas. That used to be the holiday season or the Christmas season down there. They used to put Christmas decorations up on Thanksgiving night and then take them down, after the first of the year. But so we'd try to go sometime in that time period. And once upon a time, there was a couple weeks in there that were considered slow weeks. So that's when we would go. And that was a lot of fun. And we went a couple years at Christmas, which is crowded. It's just unbelievable. Even back then, we'd go, but we knew what to expect. Maybe not the first time, but back then you'd have to wait in lines for the bathroom they were longer than the ride lines, especially for the women's bathrooms, which I think they worked on that. But that's a side story. But Christmas is just such a special time down there in the Christmas holidays. If you like Christmas, I've never been down for Halloween. I'd like to go down for Halloween sometime or during that season. Since they start that in August now, I guess that wouldn't be as hard to do. But okay, Carol, I think it's about time for you to hit the road, and looks like it's 11:26. So I'm going to wish you well. Oh, I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. Are you on a traditional school schedule? 9 months and off in the summer type thing, or are you guys year-round school? Up here, it seems to be about half and half. Some counties have gone to that, and some counties are still traditional. I used to think that 12 months a year around the year of school was not good, but I actually think it is better than I used to think. Okay. You have a good day, Carol. It's always a pleasure talking to you. And I appreciate you putting up with my car key jokes and my holler sense of humor. And, but it's always a pleasure and always good to see you. And I appreciate you coming in. So you have a good day. Have fun out at Costco. If you go skating, be careful. Have fun. Or let your daughter do it all so you don't have to worry about breaking anything. And I will see you probably somewhere down the road later tonight or somewhere. I'm sure we'll cross paths in a chat somewhere at some time. So have a great day, and it's been a pleasure. So long from the holler. Good afternoon, good day. Goodbye. I have to find that button where I turn this off. See you in the chats.